painting creates the feeling of, the painting creates the feeling that between the sun setting and the line being posted at a post on the mountain, the water is the protection from threats. I know that's a run-on.
Yeah.
I need to wreck it down.
Yeah. Sharing how, so add that in now, so you read it that way. Right after sharing.
Okay.
Excellent. A lot of times when you're writing first draft, things will come through you really quickly, like they have, for you. So I write it that way, but then when you go back in to edit, you can just break your sentences up a little bit.
I usually play through a couple of ways that I can start my paper in my head, but then, it takes the paper a couple of different directions, and usually I end up choosing the one that I think I can most easily get into my, the main part of my paper that I'm going to talk about. So I just chose, starting about why I wanted to visit Seattle, and, then jumping into when I went to visit in the mountains and what made me stay there, so. Similar to my strange love of rain, or more the feeling I get when it rains, was my new rekindled love of the mountains. Strangely, I like how small the mountains make me feel, and how looking at them made me feel much like rain does, as if I could do anything. I loved the brilliant green shades of the trees coating the mountainsides, and how the mountains looked like a Monet painting. If I looked at it closely, I could pick out every tree, but from far away the sight was much more beautiful. I can't really say why I took so many pictures of the mountains, except it was almost as if my subconscious was saying, "You're not going to forget them this time." Those mountains, which made me feel so invincible, were another strange thing that I couldn't explain about myself. But they were also the thing that makes me cling to the University of Washington as my number one choice.
I really like how you made connections to your childhood throughout it, because usually one of the reasons that you have such strong connections to certain things is because you've experienced them and lived with them previously.
And I know I overuse the word mountains, by the way. I'm trying to think of a different way to change that right now.
I liked the imagery as well. Like, all of these have really strong imagery that's brought across by strong diction. So to your credit, the diction was great, and it really portrayed the sense of how you really want to go to Washington, and that was cool.
The imagery and your emotion really came through, almost to the point where it made me like the rain in the mountains. It was so strong.
Even if you don't like rain.
Yeah, it was really persuasive.
What do you think your connection to mountains is for you? What do you think it means? You talked a little bit about that, this idea of feeling smaller than something that massive or whatever.
When I lived in Colorado, that's all I really remember about living there. And I guess being around that kind of brings me back to the part of my childhood that I can't really remember. So it's kind of refreshing almost just to go back to that.
I wondered if you could explore a little bit more of that in the piece, because I wanted that connection of I got that, you definitely are into nature, and that comes across clearly. But I wondered if you could make that connection to that ache or something that was left there in Colorado, and then you're going to be able to connect back to that or something.
Dread, loss, things that haunt our lives nearly every day. We constantly feel pain and see suffering amongst our own kind. The world we live in is a dark place, but amongst all these things we still have hope. That small thread we cling to pull us through the hard times. The idea that our situation can and will get better drives us to the next day. Hope is our only weapon against a hateful world, the drive to finish what we have left undone. It seems that my grandmother had a tremendous amount of hope. Actually, she was my great-grandmother, Nana Cordes. She was old and ill, but still had things she wanted to do. In my then 11 years of age, I had only seen her once, when I was about 3 years old, and before she passed, she had wished to see all of her children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren once more. It was at this time that we planned our trip out to London to visit my granddad. I didn't realize when we had visited her that her condition was so horrid. I realize now that the willpower and hope of my grandma, and I realize that now, and see my Nana Cordes was a very strong woman, even into old age, and that left her frail and ill.
I kind of liked how it was, you talked about how your grandma was dying, but you also, talked about how you kind of, no one really was, kind of mourning the fact that she was going to die, but that, people were kind of, celebrating, and it kind of, brought you guys all together and stuff.
If you decide if you want to shift the tone itself, because I agree, I think the piece is primarily your grandma once you drop into it, your Nana. But maybe keep that enticement of bringing the reader in by opening up with questions.
I don't like the opening. I thought it was a little bit dark, like just saying there's nothing in the world but hope. Like I think that's like a little bit desperate, just a little bit too dark for like the celebration of your grand's life. Maybe look for more something to celebrate her life, like look for happy tones rather than sad tones. Because if you just go through, follow the hope, and just have the dark beginning, it doesn't really set up well for the hope of your grandma, you know.
I thought the tone of your paper was more like celebration than anything, and like the beginning kind of like set a tone for like gloom and
It's like gloomy suicidal business.
It's kind of a tribute to this woman's life that you only get to really meet once, you know, and you take this journey and meet her. And one of the things, I find that, you know, this is something that you'll see as you guys age, is that oftentimes families sort of splinter away, your siblings move away, or, you know, you have cousins or people that live elsewhere, and you will oftentimes encounter them just briefly. And what I like about this piece is that it's not like you're living with this person every day, but it's kind of like from this work of art, somehow it brought back this memory of yours, you know? Yeah, I like it overall. It's really good.